What is up, everyone, and welcome to Washington is a Joke, the show where we talk about how dumb Washington is at time. We talk about the virus, we talk about stimulus checks for you and me, and we talk about the triple P. So this week, we're going to go back and obviously since it's Saturday, go around the world, but really talk about the question that I think is really getting on a lot of people's minds. When do we open? And how do we do it? So again, being Saturday, let's start with going around the world. And we're going to start here in love with Japan, where for whatever reason the last couple weeks we've been starting. And things are not looking so hot in Japan right now. Again, they have been trying to get their testing up to speed. They've been trying to figure out where viral hotspots are. But again, despite a culture that is very, in tune with hand washing, is generally more healthy than perhaps Western countries, you're still seeing that these coronavirus cases are spiking. And I think that's partially to do with the information lagging in the sense of they didn't want to test, they didn't want to pretend like they knew because they were still trying to have the Olympics. Now that the Olympics are postponed, it is this game of trying to test, figure out, how bad is it? And that leaves into a really dangerous almost situation because you're trying to figure out how are we going to deal with this? And just like here in the US, they're really worried about rural hospitals because, again, in many countries, you have your metropolitan hospitals that are very well funded. You have people who want to work there. Then you have rural hospitals, which they exist to serve a vulnerable population that needs it, people who don't live in major metropolitan areas. And at the same time, generally they're lower on the pecking order, and it's harder to get doctors to fund there. So you have a potential crisis here where if people don't show up or they don't have the ability to treat people in Japan, again, just like the US, you're going to potentially have a devastating spiral effect. And that's certainly a concern for them at the moment. And at this point, I don't think we know. I don't think we know, being so far behind and really struggling to recognize it is or isn't a problem. You have the reverse where South Korea, neighbors stepped up, so we're going to test, we're going to figure out where the disease is. Let's do well. And it turned out well for the prime minister of South Korea. His party just, I believe, got 60 to 70% of the vote. People are really happy. And the virus there has been more or less eradicated through a combination of testing and being able to easily and effectively treat people who are sick. Contrast with Japan, and that just doesn't seem to be the case. So I think we'll have to watch, we'll have to see, we'll have to figure out, what's going to happen there. Now, the next place we're going to go to today is, let's go to India. And India, too, we've talked about for a few weeks now, because they've had an interesting situation of, having cops beat people, then try to have the cops take the opposite side of, let's be friends, look at our funny hat. And now you're having the situation where this is something that I think you see a lot in larger countries. China has the same situation, where you have people who leave rural areas, they go to major cities, let's say in India, it's Delhi, it's Mumbai, etc. And then now they're coming home and they have this, you're a city person. Oh, you haven't been here for a while. We don't trust you. We don't know where you've been. We don't know, what you could have. And so that's putting people out on the street because even the relatives don't want to take them back. And then you also have a situation because that in these even more developing areas of developing economies, that they don't have easy access to credit. So if you have racked up debt for loans, whether it's for a dowry, a marriage, someone got sick, you wanted to have an extension on your house, you're largely dealing with loan sharks. And that system doesn't work great, but it sort of works some situations when people can work. But you have a situation now, and people are not able to work. And so what that unfortunately puts people in a situation is people, the only thing they can do is essentially enter into a bondage labor agreement. And what's bondage labor agreement? Well, it's slavery. There's really no other way around it. You essentially agree to be a slave to someone else for a period of time to pay off a debt. And, maybe in the West that would not be looked as favorably upon. Unfortunately, it probably still does happen here. But it's particularly a problem in emerging economies where people, the only thing they have is their time and their effort. So they're paid nothing. They are told to work for an indefinite period of time. And then maybe they get some food, maybe they don't. And it just kind of sort of works. And I think it's very concerning that, as these countries over the last decade, 2 decades have been on a steadily increasing, rise, that now they're going to hit this situation where potentially the underlying fabric of society is going to fall apart. It's going to put people in a tough spot. So, we'll keep watching. Obviously, I think this is a story that I'm going to follow very intently. The same in China as well, as they have the waves, because in Asia they're now hitting the second wave, which we've been told is going to happen in the U.S., that's potentially going to come in 3 waves, and now we're seeing there that kind of, again, showing what potentially the future in the U.S., for better or for worse, could look like. So next what we're going to go to is, let's go to Germany. And the reason we're looking at Germany this week, and we looked at it this last week, is because I think that they are honestly doing the best of really any Western country. They immediately stepped in and they helped workers, people who, are your delivery drivers, they're the restaurant workers, people who, are working class or middle class, and said, look, we're just going to give you payments, we're going to make an easy process. You could say that has something to do with a effective government revenue system paid by taxes, and so people are not as reliant on charity. However, it's still working. I think that they've done a good job, again, also of testing, and seem to be now trying to get into the situation of, let's reopen. Let's figure out what retail businesses can be reopened. Let's figure out who can go back to work, because at some point you got to get back to work. You got to get the economy stood back up. And even in Germany, though, you're seeing kind of two sides of this argument. You have the one side, which is, let's cautiously, optimistically reopen. Let's figure out, what is the bare minimum level of businesses that need to reopen, and then potentially gradually up. And then you also have a little bit here as well of, let's just reopen most of it. Let's also reopen our schools, because why not? Let's send kids back. Let's, do as much as we can. And so even there, you're seeing from the business side, oh, it seems great. But you also have the reverse side, which is, but do we really need kids to go back to school? We're in May, or almost in May, we're almost approaching the end of the school year. People are kind of adapting, maybe some situations better than others, but is that really the best thing to open up risk? And it's not necessarily, I think, the risk of, a child may get sick. Certainly you could have teachers getting seriously sick, but I think it's just having these children going out, potentially being a vector for this illness, bringing it back home, getting people who are more vulnerable sick, that is letting people of, is this really worth the risk or is it not? And so I think that's going to be something that we're going to have to continue to follow. And hopefully it goes well there. I think it'd be great, again, here in the U.S., where it seems like everyone's idea about how to reopen is one degree or another of, I don't know, that if you can have something that works, again, different circumstances, different government, obviously having different taxes, you can throw maybe more money at things, that maybe is something that we can try here in the U.S. Now, the other thing, speaking of the U.S., that people have been talking a lot about is, where's my stimulus check? That was the title of this show for the last couple weeks. It's certainly still a big deal. And unfortunately, if you want to figure out where your money is, the IRS also says, I don't know where your money is. Our system can't find it, or maybe you didn't pay taxes enough, or maybe the IRS just says, not important. And you have that. And then you have this situation that I found out about, which is people from China who used to live here in the US, let's say in 2018, pay taxes, and for whatever reason, the IRS is like, well, you get a stimulus check too, when they don't even live here. They've returned back to China, they're asking someone, hey, I'm going to have to file taxes for 2019, can someone help me so I can return this? And this is not an isolated incident. Looking through a few Chinese forms, there's probably a few people, I don't want to say maybe it's hundreds, maybe it's thousands, but there's definitely a decent amount of people who are saying, I don't know why I got this money, I don't live in the US anymore. And you have people who are saying, I need this money to survive, I need this money to pay rent, to pay food, and they're not getting it, and they're told, I don't know when you're going to get it, we can't figure out, we don't have a system in place, or this is already running out. And then you have people who don't deserve the money who are getting it. And personally, I just think that seems wrong. And the IRS, government, and whatever just are like, well, we'll figure it out, because we also don't know when that money's going to come either. And it's disgusting, because it doesn't just stop with the individual, it also is with small businesses who are the lifeblood of this country. And you have companies like Shake Shack, who they have 2 years worth of revenue that they could survive off of, 2 years of savings, they're getting money. You have Ruth Chris Steakhouse, which again, they had success, and they're still saying, sure, if you're going to give us free money, great, awesome. And then you contrast that with someone that I've been following on Twitter, Dan Price, who's saying 95% of his customers, they are a small business payments transaction service, so companies or small businesses use them to handle their credit card payments. 95% of them, give or take, have not received any money. So you are essentially telling small businesses they are not important. These chain restaurants, larger businesses, please come to the front of the line. Hedge funds, please come to the front of the line. And we are going to lose the fabric of America for what? What do we as a country get in exchange for this trade-off? And so far, I think it's this, a big fat zero. We get nothing for it except politicians get to say, oh, I help my donors out. They're going to donate some more money to me. Everything's great. My district's pretty much screwed, but hey, it's all good. It's fine. It's whatever. And again, I think that that's ridiculous that you're having these situations where people are not able to get the help that they need. And then you put people here in charge of having the oversight committee that have so many conflicts of interest, whether it's stock ownership, not a real interest, not a real desire to actually help small businesses, and it puts a terrible strain on anyone feeling that there's a degree of confidence that the government's going to help them. And, if you're going to tell people, don't work, stay home, which, if, again, you've watched this show for a little bit, I'm certainly a fan of. I don't think if you need to go outside more than you need to, you should. But the government has to help people during that time. You can't just say, don't leave, good luck. Because, again, people live paycheck to paycheck. They may be coming back from an illness. They may be coming back from a bad financial situation. If they can't work, then the government's going to have to help. And when you put people in charge who seem to have no ability to understand how to help, then you're going to get these situations where you're going to have very bloated programs that don't solve any problem. They just have a nice big number and it's like, see, we're helping. Everything's great, but it's not. And, just like I was mentioning with Japan, this is a really great article too, if you're in the mood for it, that talks about these challenges with rural hospitals. That you have rural communities and rural hospitals that have either been closed down or saying, well, I'm not close, I'm not dense, I'll be fine, I don't care about this COVID-19 thing. And then they get sick, or they get sick in a decent droves, and then where do they go? They go into these hospitals in larger areas that have essentially acted as a feeder system. And it's hard to really then justify to healthcare professionals, hey, put yourself at risk. These people don't care until they get sick, or they're not willing to fund local hospitals and keeping them open. And you're in this situation of, okay, well, if you don't want involvement, then don't ask for help. But then, obviously you should help them. And it just seems like, no one really has a real plan. How are you going to treat people? How are you going to keep people safe? And it's going to continue to put more and more people at risk. And I just think that is very sad and it's very unfortunate. And then finally looking here at Texas, again, you got to help people. You have Texans, not just here in DFW, but throughout the state who are saying, I need help. I'm either worried about rent, I'm worried about my utilities, I'm worried about food, and there's not a program. We've spent all these, loopholes and back ends to make unemployment numbers lower so we can feel better about ourselves, or, have no government because all government's bad. And then now when you need some government assistance, it's not there. And the situation that you're seeing here is, oh, well, let's just figure out some way to reopen. Again, I think it's great to try to reopen, but if you don't have testing, then you're really just setting yourself up for failure, because you're going to have a lot of people who are not feeling comfortable about going out, or you're going to have people who do go out, so then you're paying all this for staff again, but there's no revenue. And to me, it's still not a plan. It's still not a plan just to have a bunch of business leaders get around and say, oh, well, thank you, Greg Abbott, or thank you, Trump, or thank you, take your state, take your governor, take your senator, whatever. It's not, again, a Republican or Democratic problem. It's an American governmental problem, that people don't have answers to hard problems, because that's not what they've been elected for. Many of our politicians are not elected to solve any problems. They're elected to make people feel good about themselves, and that, oh, I'm a great person to have at an event. I'm a great person to have at a luncheon. And I just think that it's nuts. It's nuts to just have all these people come out, oh, I'll figure it out. Oh, it's great. It's cool. It's fine. It's whatever. Because it's not. It's not okay. And I think that anyone running for office right now, as I, happen to be here in Dallas, that you need to have them display, what is your plan? What would you do in that situation? So here we are. Here is my plan about how we get back on our feet. I think the first thing that I would do is I would get in touch with someone from the South Korean government that can figure out what tests can we get from y'all, and then also get a really clear idea of how far are we away from the 5-minute test. We have got to test more people in this country, and we've got to do it in a rapid and effective manner. Because if we don't know where hotspots are, then people are going to feel very uncomfortable if they don't have to go outside and risk their life. And then once you do that, then you start again gradually reopening over the course of, let's say, 6 to 12 months. And what does that look like? Well, people who absolutely need to be there, so your retail workers or, some sort of maybe entertainment where you can. Figuring out what cannot be done online. Like, what are you really just having people sit out? Figure out some way to hopefully create an avenue for them to start earning money. Again, testing is key. Figuring out some system to know who's healthy, who's not. I was talking to someone from Deep Ellum, our nightlife district here, and talking about, could we have some sort of health check at the door, similar how you get checked for your ID, that you can know, hey, I'm sick or I'm not. So give people some avenue to hopefully go out occasionally. And then you gradually open. As a knowledge worker, as a programmer, I don't need to go out. Like, I don't need to go back to work ASAP. So, tell us, great, you're staying at home, you're gonna have to deal with it. But you need to figure out then if you're going to have people stay at home to make sure they get the help they need. And that's kind of the part too, is that we are going to drastically focus on providing at least a $60,000 a year per family salary through the duration of this crisis for people who their careers have been identified as you are unable to work. Now, is this going to potentially disincentivize some people going back to work? Yeah, it may. But to me, the trade-off of disincentivizing some people to going back to work is far less than having people having to risk their life because they cannot afford to eat and they cannot afford to keep a roof on their head. So there's my, idea. Obviously, it's going to get refined over time. I encourage you to give me your feedback on it. But most important thing that I asked you is hold your representatives accountable. Find out what their plan is. And if they don't have a plan, then you know that they are truly worthless. And so with that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. We will be back here again on Saturday. We are still working on getting this stood up, making this a little bit more professional with a few more graphics. But I do appreciate you taking the time out to hang out with me. Remember, take care of one another, call people you love, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one, everyone.